All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome back to Everything College Football Podcast. Today, me and Nick here will be doing our look at the Auburn Tigers and their 2025 transfer portal haul. Nice little class put together by Hugh Freeze and his staff as they look to overcome back-to-back losing seasons to start his tenure. It's been disappointing on the field, but one area it's not been disappointing, Nick, has been recruiting. Seems like they're knocking that out of the park and really building up a pretty incredible roster here that should compete in the SEC in 2025 and beyond. Big reason why this team struggled so much last year is quarterback was a major issue for them. I really thought that Peyton Thorne could elevate them with what he had around him in terms of weapons, and I ended up being wrong, Nick, and you were pretty right in that category statistically. He ended up having a pretty good season. The back half of the year was much better for him. But the season was pretty much already over at that point. They started off very poor on offense. It was just abysmal. Thorne, for example, against OU at home, had a great game, and then he had a horrendous interception that ended up costing him that contest. Of course, he had 4 picks against California in the game against Week 2. Not all of them were his fault, but for all around, it just shows you how many flaws this offense had. They went out and they've made some big-time additions to try and smooth things over on this side of the ball. Starts with Jackson Arnold, the former 5-star recruit out of Oklahoma. Some of the notes on him, this is a guy who's a touch passer. I think he has good football IQ. He controls his velocity pretty well. Good on the move. He's got a good arm. He's got awareness in the pocket. Biggest problems you saw last year at OU, inconsistent vision, can really get antsy under pressure. And even though he has IQ, his mental processing is still, taking some strides. This is a guy who wasn't very good for Oklahoma last year, Nick. Obviously it was a perfect storm in terms of negatives for him, though. Like his top 7 receivers were hurt the entire season. The offensive line, they replaced all 5 starters coming into the year, which we said would be a red flag, and they ended up being even worse than we thought. So they couldn't run the ball one bit. Jackson Arnold, it was tough for him as a first-year starter, but then going to Auburn now, better coaching staff, better weapons as well, and you'd assume they'd all be healthy. I think Arnold's a very underrated steal here for the Tigers, and I think he's really going to correct the quarterback issues.
A really good ad here for Auburn with Jackson Arnold. Quarterback was my biggest red flag with them. I know they brought in a ton of great receivers last year. They had a really strong class with some really talented players. They brought in a great receiver in the portal, and Lambert Smith from Penn State, a guy that was really solid for them. They did a lot of work. They had a really good roster. Perry Thompson, another one they brought in that was really solid for that team. Cam Coleman as well, but I was worried about the quarterback. I was worried about Peyton Thorne, and I was right. He had a bad season. He made a ton of mistakes, which is a complete liability for them and was not going to be able to get him over the hump. Now they bring in a guy in Jackson Arnold, as well as 2 other quarterbacks in this portal class that we're talking about in a second, that could really do a lot for them. Arnold, a former 5-star at high school, number 10 player in the nation, his recruiting class to 4th quarterback overall, and ranked as a 4-star in this portal class by 247 Sports. Did he have a great season in Oklahoma? No, but I think, like you said, he was missing a lot of talented players. The offensive line had a lot of issues, and the offense was out of shape. 1,400 yards passing still, 12 touchdowns, 3 picks. He protected the ball, really was good about that. Avoided turnovers in the games he did play. Not a full body of work, right? 246 attempts totaled, 62% comp rate. So not a full body of work. Got benched, came back, got benched. All those different movement things going on with there. But I still think he's a really talented quarterback that has a lot of upside. 6'1", 211. Got some experience, played some games as a freshman now, played some games last year, and can really have an opportunity to step into this offense and take over the reins. This Auburn team needs a quarterback to lead the way. They're also bringing in Deuce Knight, who is a great prospect coming in out of high school. So this is a really deep quarterback room now that has a lot of competition. I'm very curious to see which way it goes down the plains.
Early on, Freeze was criticized for not doing anything about the quarterback position, and he decided to give the guy, the experienced veteran in Thorne, an opportunity. And you can certainly commend him for that, but I think he finally was aware after how the season went. He decided to go out and improve this room significantly. Like you said, Knight, the 5-star. Arnold is one of 3 quarterbacks I picked up in the transfer portal. Tanner Bailey arrives, and then Ashton Daniels from Stanford, pretty underrated addition as well. Had an up-and-down season, ended up having 12 picks to 10 passing touchdowns for Stanford. He was their leading rusher, though. Not the worst player in the world, I don't think, to come in and be a number 2. Kind of reminiscent of when Robbie Ashford was at Auburn. So I don't think, these are some bad additions at all. I think Arnold will be good, and in depth is certainly not going to be an issue for Auburn. They have plenty of different guys. I mean, a complete revampment in the quarterback room, Nick. Kudos out to Freeze for understanding the problem and going out and fixing it in a great way.
credit is due where credit is given where credit is due, right? I think he's had a really good job at bringing in players here. He brought in Tanner Bailey, who I don't think will play a whole lot of factor in this room, but still a guy you add and guy you got to keep a look at. Deuce Knight, the 5-star out of high school. Some Auburn fans have been calling for him to start day one. I don't think that's the best move. I really don't really advise starting true freshman quarterbacks in the SEC. I think you got to give them a year to sit down and develop a little bit. And I think the same thing for Alabama, who's bringing in a strong quarterback in Keon Russell as well. I don't think you should start a true freshman quarterback in the SEC. That's just my opinion on the issue. I think you should probably start Jackson Arnold, all things considered. But you bring in Daniels. I saw Daniels play live, and I thought he was pretty solid that day. Had 2 interceptions in the game I went to against Syracuse, but had a key throw at the end of the game that helped put them in a position to win that game. A clutch throw on 4th down, to get the job done. Regressed as a passer this past season, 2023. He had 2,200 yards this year, 1,700 yards. Also had more interceptions than touchdowns with 10 and then 12 interceptions. But he developed as a runner this year, 670 yards on the ground and 3 scores, 4.5 yards per carry. You could use this guy in a couple different setups, maybe do a 2-quarterback system where you bring him in on 3rd down, bring him in different plays. Hugh Freeze, an offensive mind, could certainly draw up some fun plays and develop something where you can get this quarterback involved as a runner as well. I think Ashton Daniels presents that full skill set there. Has 3 years of experience at Stanford playing in the ACC this past season. Not a bad add at all for depth. I think Daniels is a really solid piece and an underrated add in this portal class.
Look at some of the other players they got. Eric Singleton from Georgia Tech, one of the top players available. Guy with great speed at receiver, versatile. Pretty good route runner, nice leaping ability, like what he does in those regards. He was used very well at Georgia Tech. But of course, that was a run-first offense, so weren't always able to get him downfield. Highly coveted player, though, 754 yards, 3 touchdowns. He can be a big-time playmaker for you, in special teams as well, and as a runner if you decide to use him in that facet. Also picked up Horatio Fields. I love the size of 6'3", 205. Great ability and balance to catch downfield. Good hands. This guy's going to be a 3rd down red zone option. He struggles to get off the line of scrimmage. Limited speed, doesn't have much yak, more of a pure possession receiver. Horatio Fields, though, I think is a phenomenal option here for Auburn, Nick, because you alluded to some of these guys they have, like Cam Coleman, Perry Thompson, Malcolm Simmons even. They got plenty of guys who are, in terms of raw talent, phenomenal, and I think Fields is kind of that change of pace receiver who's going to be using those, seldom options that I referred to. Of course, Singleton's also going to fit in that playmaker mold. Great versatile room here. 2 phenomenal additions at receiver.
Yeah, these are 2 really solid additions. Interesting enough that both Fields and Singleton are from Douglasville, Georgia, from the same area. Might have some previous chemistry there. 2 guys that are really solid. I think, the frame on Singleton is really solid for speedster, 5'11", 190. On Fields, 6'3", 205, a guy that's more physical. Singleton, I thought he had a really good season. I was surprised he signed with Auburn. I thought someone else might pick him up in the portal. Really good ad for them. He's a really solid player, 755 receiving for him, and 3 touchdowns on 13.5 yards for grab. While Fields was a solid piece at times for this Demon Deacons team, a really big physical player, possession receiver, 463, 4 touchdowns, and 11.9 yards for grab for them. 2 nice adds here. These are 2 wide receivers that complement an already deep room, right? You're adding on to a room that's already super talented with Perry Thompson and Cam Coleman. Plugs in really well. You had to replace the production from Lambert Smith, who leaves. I think you got production with these 2 that you could plug in and really match or even do better than the production that you got last year out of that receiver that is no longer with the program, moving on to bigger things. I think this is a really strong wide receiver room with some really young talent and some guys that have experience playing in the ACC that translates pretty well to the SEC.
2 more guys on the offensive side of the ball. Darrell Robinson at running back, guy from UConn who showcased great one-cut ability, especially for his size. Pretty good speed, impressive vision as a pure zone runner. Did play poor competition, though. Wasn't used much in gap schemes, mostly zone. And purely a check down option in the pass game's not going to provide much as a receiver. Wide open running back room here. Likely to be a by-committee approach. Jeremiah Cobb, Damari Alston, 2 veterans on the roster are going to get the nod over Robinson, but this is a respectable addition. I really like what he brings to the table. And of course, this offensive line was abysmal last year. Xavier Chaplin, one of the top tackles available. Auburn was able to snag him from Virginia Tech. This is a guy that has a great motor, plays to the end of the play, has really good footwork and pass pro. Physicality and power as a run blocker, though, was what stood out the most. He can at times get pushed back in pass pro, but he always seemed to anchor down. We'll certainly watch more tape on him in the summer. Those are some of the quick notes on him, Nick. This is a guy that's been a 2-year starter for VT at left tackle. Phenomenal upgrade there. What do you make of what he'll bring to the table and Robinson fitting in that running back room?
Yeah, 6'7", 223 for Chappell on the offensive line. A big physical player. The footwork, I think, was really solid. Again, a guy you got to break down a little bit more on the film, but I think this is a guy you can play in a variety of positions on the offensive line. I think he's a really solid tackle you can plug in there. Robinson, I was excited to see what he did at UConn this year. I thought he was really solid for them. 731 yards, 8 touchdowns, 6.8 yards per carry on 107 touches. Solid numbers there. This is the back that I think has a lot of success. He blew hot and cold, right? There were certainly games where he had bad days. He had a bad day against Syracuse where he didn't get a whole lot of touches, had a bad day against Georgia State where he also struggled in that one. But he had a good day against UMass, had a good day against Rice and UAB. Against Rice, 15 carries, 132, 8.8, and 1 score, while 83 yards on 11 carries, 7.5, and 1 touchdown against UMass for them. So, blows hot and cold, but I think he's a reliable back against some of those weaker competition of freshmen. So still a lot of eligibility with him, a lot of experience to be gained. This is a back at 6'1", 200 pounds. It's got good footwork, good speed, and good field vision there. I think he's a solid add from this portal class.
Yeah, I mean, overall, I think these are additions that are going to really elevate this offense. A couple of plug-and-play guys, added some depth to the receiver room. Only one offensive addition in Chaplin. They get Mason Murphy as well, but you're not sure if he's going to be a starter from USC. He's versatile, though. He can play a tackle, kick inside. Preston Howard, a tight end from Maryland as well. Don't really have any notes on him. He should occupy number 2 role there, though. Overall, this offense should certainly march forward a great deal. I mean, last season was pretty bad for them. I think if they get more consistency in playmaking at quarterback, this offense will be just fine because they have guys at receiver that can make plays. Moving to the defensive side of the ball, not many notable players they picked up here, but I think ones that can certainly be impactful in key areas. Rayon Strader, I'm going to start with him. This is a corner from Miami of Ohio. He was targeted a lot, allowed a good amount of receptions and yards, but he also has a tremendous amount of ball skills, limited the yak for the most part. He's a competitive player, though. He's getting targeted that much. A lot of man coverage they play over there in the MAC. It's not easy, so you have to be able to show mental toughness, and that's what he did. 2 picks and 18 pass breakups this past year. Great corner here, Nick. I know, in terms of yards, though, he gave up like 600 yards or something like that. It's not ideal, but again, the competitive toughness is what they're looking for. This is certainly going to be an instant upgrade for them in the secondary, which has also been a bit of an issue for them and a lot of youth for Auburn.
Yeah, I think Strader's a really solid add from Miami, a guy that's got some good experience. 2 years as a starter, a really solid piece that you can add. I think the frame on him is good. 6 foot 180. Was really solid this past year. 53 total tackles, 17 pass breakups, 2 interceptions. Really solid in coverage. A bit of a weaker tackler, certainly a bit of a liability there, but overall, I think this is a guy that's really solid in coverage. In 2023, had 57 total tackles, 12 pass breakups, and a pick. So a solid asset. This guy's got good experience. Played as a true freshman. Played as a true sophomore last year. So 2 years of experience playing as a younger player in the MAC. I think he was solid. Struggled against Ohio in the conference title game, but had a better end of the season. Was really strong in the previous 4 games where he had multiple tackles in those games. Was looking really solid in coverage. This is a good coverage asset. You can certainly plug him in at cornerback. I think he'll have a lot of success for this Auburn Tigers defense.
So the other guys in the front 7, Chris Murray from Sam Houston State. He was the top tackle for loss guy on what was a very good defense for the Bearcats. Good use of hands and arms, lots of strength, good quickness and speed for being 255 pounds. Was really happy with what he was able to provide. Of course, you're going to have to adjust to the competition here in the SEC. But he's a guy you can throw into your room, and you don't have to expect him to be an every down starter. He can get in and be a nice rotational piece. You look at some of the other guys as well. Dallas Walker, he's like 320 pounds, played at Western Kentucky last year on the interior. Wasn't all that great, but again, rotational pieces and size, that's really what you're looking for in the trenches in college football nowadays, especially with how easily your depth can get depleted due to the transfer portal. I think Dallas Walker is a nice addition for them. Last season, the Nashville native had 4 tackles for loss. Even had an interception as well, Nick. So big man rumbling downfield there. And then they also, Xavier Atkins, a highly athletic player. They say can really lay the boom. Didn't play at LSU. I think he's only got 1 year of experience under his belt, limited snaps. So he's still a very youthful player. Reunites with DJ Durkin, who heavily recruited him when he was at A&M. So that's pretty much it for this defense in terms of the notables. I also picked up Tay Seymour, Georgia Tech safety, played like 400, 500 snaps. He was abysmal, but going out there and being able to pick up some respectable players across the board.
Yeah, I think there's some solid ads here. I think Walker, at 6'4", 320, like you were saying, really a big body there, solid at clogging the run. 50 total tackles for him, forced fumble, a pick as well. Was really solid for this defense, for this Western Kentucky team. A guy that's just a big physical player. You plug him in the middle there. Really good to have that type of size in the SEC. Chris Murray, same thing. 6'4", 250, so definitely 50 pounds lighter, but still a really more agile player coming off the edge. 5.5 sacks for him last year, 35 total tackles, 2 forced fumbles, coming over from Sam Houston, a guy that was big on their defensive line, was a key player for them. A solid ad in my opinion. He highlighted two other ads there that I think are decent enough players that can do something. Seymour didn't have a great year at Georgia Tech, but still a guy with experience playing in the ACC. You might be able to get more out of him than Xavier Atkins. Has not played at LSU, but at 6', 210 is a guy that has a lot of potential. Was a solid player coming out of high school that DJ Durkin recruited at A&M. They didn't really add a ton of pieces of defense, but I thought the defense was pretty solid last year for Auburn. Didn't lose a whole lot. They got a lot of returning players who potentially were going to the portal, ended up staying back with the program. I trust the defense right now. I think it's a pretty good Auburn defense.
Yeah, the defense was put in a lot of bad spots throughout the year. Also played a pretty tough schedule, but I thought they played hard. It never really just seemed to be abysmal. I know they were in a bit of a shootout with A&M, and in the game against Alabama, they had some issues there. But they were competitive throughout the year. This was never really a bad unit, one that you can certainly be proud of, and one that I think you can certainly look to. They have tremendous improvements as well. Kind of like last year, though, they had a couple of portal guys who ended up being great for them. Their top 2 tackles last year, for example, were portal guys. So I think they're certainly expecting a lot from these players. But I don't think you're going to look to some of these guys to be top-end producers, kind of like they were last season. So I think this Auburn defense is really going to improve, and I think the offense is also going to improve. A lot of high expectations from me on that side of the ball. Overall, this is an exciting football team, Nick. Obviously in the SEC, everyone's going to be good, especially after a bit of a down year last season. It's going to be even more competitive. Where does Auburn fit into that race?
Yeah, it's certainly an interesting race. I think Auburn has a good case. I look at the schedule. It's not ridiculously bad. We played, at Baylor non-conference on opening weekend. That's certainly a game you want to keep an eye on, but the rest of their non-conference playing in FCS, then Ball State, South Alabama, not concerning. I look at the 2 end of September games at Oklahoma, at A&M. Certainly a tough stretch for a bye week, and then hosting the Georgia Bulldogs at Jordan-Hare. Upset alert. It's a tough place to play at Jordan-Hare. They host Missouri as well right after that, a game that they should certainly win. They get Kentucky at home, and then of course the Iron Bowl is in Jordan-Hare this year, and weird things happen. We all know what goes on in the Iron Bowl down there. Hugh Freeze looking at his first win over the bitter rival from north part of the state. They also have a trip to Arkansas and Vanderbilt on the horizon. Arkansas, I think they should still be able to win that game. Vanderbilt, that's a team where there's a lot of question marks there, but Freeze has had trouble with Pavia in the past, so maybe Vanderbilt gets one more notch on Auburn. Obviously, we'll break that all down further into the summer. Just clicking a quick glance there. This is a team that should take a step forward under Hugh Freeze. 6-7 in year one, 5-7 this past year, missing a bowl game. They want to get back to a bowl game, right? They need to find a way to get back to a bowl game. That was the first time that Hugh Freeze missed a bowl game in his entire career as a head coach, other than the year that he got fired at Ole Miss, which was a whole scandal-plagued year. So this is a guy that's used to getting to bowl games. Didn't get to one last year, and that will certainly ignite a fire under him. Went out, got a lot of key pieces. This Auburn team, they want to be competitive. If they don't get results in year 3, you're going to start seeing things, them asking questions, start to figure out, is Hugh Freeze the guy long term? This has to be a big year for them. They got to start rounding the corner here, and the talent they brought in should certainly help them do so.
It's going to be it for today's episode. Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.